The first full week of Chaos Rising is officially over in Japan, and to no one's surprise, it wasn't very chaotic. As you can see from these tier lists, Dragapult EX is still by far the #1 deck. I mean, they literally printed something almost specifically designed to make Dragapult better in Special Red Card. This stupid thing is an item that forces everyone to include Psyduck in their deck unless you always want to have a 3-card hand. And if you think I'm crying more than for the win when he spills a cup of hot tea on his thick thighs, Special Red Card has been featured in 900 top 16 decks so far, after 1 week of Chaos Rising legality. For comparison, Felipe is in 6. Yeah, that's freaking insane. But enough making you sad. Playing PTCGL already does that. Instead, I'll spend this brief time we have together before you get bored and swipe to another video by telling you about how the new cards in Chaos Rising are performing. Despite getting off to a great start in Japan, finishing the first weekend as the 3rd best deck, Mega Greninja EX has fallen off a bit. While it's not as sharp of a drop as Mega Starmie, I think the newness is slowly starting to wear off and people are going back to just playing Dragapult on its own. Yep, if you couldn't guess, Dragapult's been the most common partner for Greninja. While that's unexpected, probably the most surprising thing is how useful Terra Greninja's been. At its core though, Mega Greninja has been operated roughly how we thought. Neo Upper Energy is the A-spec as it allows you to deal 200 damage, safely putting it back into your hand. As a result, this also lets you attack with Dragapult when necessary. Terra Greninja meanwhile gives you a way to deal 170 damage with a fighting type for a single water, KOing things like Meowth and Fezandipity while also grabbing any card from deck. And when the moment arises, you can Mirage Barrage for 120 damage twice thanks to Ignition Energy. Mirage Barrage is important because Mega Greninja's ability snipes 6 damage counters wherever you want. It does have to be in the active and you do lose a water energy from hand, but with Surfing Beach, Air Balloon, and Energy Retrieval, it's not a big deal. Ironically, despite seemingly being made specifically for Mega Greninja, Big Catch Net has been barely used in any of the lists. This is approximately what the best version of Mega Greninja looks like. Dracloak is mostly here for card draw, but obviously it can evolve into Dragapult and utilize Neo Upper Energy when necessary. Otherwise, just bounce between your 2 Greninja, trying to soften things up while you lament about the fact that de-evolution no longer exists in Standard. I will note that Surfer usage has gone up slightly over the course of the week, suggesting it'll eventually be a mainstay to switch and draw up to 5. Of course, there's a couple other ways to play Mega Greninja, all of them with 2 Terra Greninja. There's been versions paired slowly with the Dunsparce, while others have Mega Starmie. After all, Starmie can attack for a single water, dealing 120 to their active and 50 to the bench. This also opens up the possibility of Bubble Energy. I did see it in 7 total decks, almost all of them featuring Starmie, as a way to block Dragalge's Poison and Monkey Dory's Confusion. But if you're not going against a deck that tries to inflict status conditions, you're just giving anyone running Enhanced Hammer a way to discard your energy. As you can see from this list, Grand Tree is the A-spec to try and get a Greninja up turn 2. And Rose's Encouragement can take 2 energy from the discard pile and give them to either of your stage 2s, provided you're losing. I will say that I noticed a distinct lack of recovery in every Greninja list, which seems fairly odd, like a parent. But until I get my feet on this frog, who am I to judge? It may have taken a few days, but Beedrill EX is finally starting to live up to its potential in Japan. Unfortunately, to my utter dismay, they didn't believe in the drill, pairing it with Arboliva. While I'm going to go hard on Redeemable Ticket and hope those with actual access to Chaos Rising realize the backup attacker is necessary. And since you already run Force of Vitality and everything to get a stage 2 grass type up and running, why not use somebody who can soften up targets? Aside from one person swapping Secret Box for Unfair Stamp, every list is pretty much the exact same. An overwhelming amount of consistency in 4 Lilies, 4 Dawn, 4 Bug Catching Set, 4 Poffin, 3 Ultra Ball, and 3 Pokepad, along with Secret Box to find everything you need, and a Dunsparce for recurring card draw. Both your attackers attack for a single grass, meaning it's very low maintenance. If you have the absolute nuts and don't prize anyone in your Beedrill line, you can literally attack with the strongest EX in Standard, dealing 440 damage for 1 energy. Otherwise, go with Arboliva's Oil Salvo, which is also the attack I use on my feet every night to pick off weak targets. There isn't really anything else to add. Beedrill can one-shot everything in the game for 1 energy, including a Hero's Caped Mega Lucario, and Arboliva can deal with things on the bench. And if you only have access to 3 Beedrill in play because PTCGL hates you, Arboliva can bring the bigger things into range. Based on the 2 first-place finishes earlier today in Japan, this will be a deck to be reckoned with come May. Unfortunately, after Greninja and Beedrill, there's a bigger drop-off than a motel pool. Cinccino, Gourgeist, Mega Floette, and Mega Dragalge all have just 1 or 2 top 16 placements each. While I'm going to believe in Dragalge until the moment it ultimately lets me down, Cinccino's a little better than I originally predicted. Don't get me wrong, its ability is still a coin flip, but paired with Metang, you can load it up with energy. From there, just hope you flip heads, preventing all damage done to Cinccino. If so, you're dealing 40 damage for each energy on the Chinchilla, meaning you need 8 to one-shot Dragapult. The list I'm about to show you also marks our first appearance of the new baby Metagross, who caused quite the back and forth in a recent YouTube short, as you'll soon learn. Looking at the deck, I feel like I need an adult. There's no draw supporters, instead relying on Petrol, Factory, and Kangaskhan. If you somehow manage to get a turn 1 trolley though, Genesect finds your Metang. You just have to play with your balls to find Cinccino. But I have a feeling that you'll be attacking with Kangaskhan and Metagross more, since they seem a lot better. Moving to Mega Dragalge, you have to remember that its first attack is essentially a Megaton blower, discarding all their tools and special energy. And Pernicious Poison can be great under the right circumstances, dealing 160 damage between turns. The third place list you're about to see included one copy of Roxy's Performance, which prevents their active from retreating if they're poisoned. This creates a fun little combo with Baby Petrarunt. First, you can Pernicious Poison and Roxy, then switch into Petrarunt the following turn, further locking them in the active while they take at least 16 damage counters during checkup. Obviously they can switch, and Petrarunt is a horrible sight, making the Zoroark matchup a nightmare. But if the cards line up, I think Dragalge has a chance, especially since it attacks for a Darkness and a Water, opening up a lane for Munkidori. I will say that I'm not a huge fan of the list. I can't tell you how many times I've prized both Lunatone or both Solrock playing Lucario, so just 2 each of Skrelp and Dragalge makes my toes sweat, and not in a good way. Add on the fact that there's 4 Crushing Hammer and 3 Pokemon Catcher, and it's like this person created a deck specifically to make me suffer. Then there's Mega Floette, whose only placement was in 11th. It takes 3 Psychic to launch Eternity Bloom, dealing just 200 damage while accelerating 4 Psychic Energy into play. Really, the only time it's useful is turn 1 going second, which requires a manual attachment plus 2 Wonders Patch. Well, the Japanese player decided to abandon that idea and go for Smoochum turn 1, putting 2 energy on Floette for free. On your next turn, that's when Eternity blooms. And if everything's going right, Angie Floette's in play, giving Mega Floette 400 hit points. Except they'll just bump your stadium, ruining all that hard work. But if they don't, you can flood the field with energy, eventually attacking with things like Xerneas and Deoxys. Except Mega Gardevoir seems kinda easier than all this, no? Anyway, Xerneas can deal 300 damage if you have 10 Psychic Energy in play, though it does have to have 3 energy on itself. Or Deoxys can deal 120 to their active and 120 to someone on their bench for 5 energy. Except if your opponent plays Boss's Orders, your entire strategy is ruined. Looking at the list, my worst nightmare has come true. No, not the one where everyone's wearing socks. It's just not cohesive. A single counter stadium or a single lazy bosses destroys any setup you might have. And you already have to run Lily's Clefairy to hit dragons for weakness, making you wonder why you aren't just playing a quad Clefairy deck, which is better, faster, stronger, and cuter. For the last EX in this section, we have Gourgeist. When it did something on day 1 of Chaos Rising, I had a mini existential crisis, thinking I wasn't as smart as you all tell me I am in the comments every single day. But then it did nothing for the next week and I was vilified. Like how the new Trevenant is basically just a worse Azelf, Gourgeist seems like a weaker Aggron. For 1 Psychic, it does 30 base damage plus 50 more for each of your bench Pokemon with a damage counter. So without Area 0, that tops out at 280. Aggron can get it up to 300 or 330 with a Brave Bangle. Still, Gourgeist does have access to Telepathic Psychic Energy and the new Phantom, who damages itself to evolve early. Of course, that 15th place list omitted Trevenant and went with Alakazam plus Risty Ruins. I mean, I guess that's a combo. They both attack for a single Psychic, and Gourgeist fills the gaping hole Alakazam leaves with its attack being in effect. But again, why are we essentially replacing Lily's Clefairy with something much worse? Right before uploading this video, a new Gourgeist list with Frostlass appeared, finishing in 9th. It's the same strategy with Risty Ruins, though I'm confused by the lack of Colress's tenacity. Gourgeist and Pumpka Amy don't have abilities for Frostlass to hit, so if you can't find a Risty Ruins, you're screwed. Despite all 4 of these EXs failing miserably so far, I've got some good news. Chaos Rising adds more new decks to the meta than Perfect Order. The bad news is that Perfect Order adds none, and it's just 2 in Chaos Rising with Greninja and Beedrill. Before I get to what else from Chaos Rising has done something so far, I should mention what's failed harder than me on a 5th grade math test. None of these 10 cards have a single placement in any tournament tracked by Limitless. Considering that Chaos Rising has just 86 cards in it, and these are all in the top 30 most playable cards in the set, well, it's like Team Rocket's original motto they eventually scrapped. Prepare for disappointment. Obviously the standouts are Mega Pyroar and Cobalion. I can get Pyroar to work. I mean, the damn thing deals 290 damage and pairs perfectly with Oricorio. It's just that Pyroar requires way too much effort for something Mega Lucario does without issue. And Cobalion doesn't really serve a purpose. If its ability was like Iron Leaves, switching the active when you plop it onto the bench, sure, maybe. Instead, it's just an attacker who basically needs Steven's Metagross to function, yet does the same amount of damage as Steven's Metagross. Naturally, as I was editing this video, a Delphox Blaziken list did something in Japan. Instead of focusing entirely on the Fox's attack, it's more about the ability of discarding Fire Energy to drop to 7. Then you can accelerate that energy with Blaziken's ability. And if enough energy does make its way into play, Delphox deals 30 damage times all energy attached to all Pokemon. I'll definitely still try out my original idea with Ethan's Ho-Oh since that focuses on Delphox, but this is at least another option. Elsewhere, I declared Patrat as the second best card in Chaos Rising in my early setlist preview. While it hasn't had as much of an impact as Shaman and Psyduck, being able to completely block Munkidori's ability is huge. As a result, Patrat's been in 54 top 16 decks so far. From what I could gather, the two most popular archetypes to use the rat are Barbaracle Okidogi and, of course, Dragapult. Because why wouldn't Dragapult get yet another card to help it out? If you skip my preview of all 86 cards in Chaos Rising, which unfortunately appears to not include Mega Slowbro, you can stop Patrat with Team Rocket's Watchtower. Regardless of this weakness, add this to the pile of counter cards you have to play to try and slow Dragapult down. Moving along to old decks getting a boost with Chaos Rising, we start with a shocker. Out of all the new Pokemon in our next set, Metagross is actually the 4th most used, placing in 39 top 16 lists. Yet only 2 of them paired it with Baby Metang. Instead, Slowking has been the overwhelming partner. Now, if you're a sane person who reads the text on Metagross' second attack, you'd assume Slowking can't copy it to deal 300 damage. After all, you have to discard 3 Metal Energy to activate the secondary effect, right? Except Slowking doesn't use Metal Energy. Turns out, this is a wacky situation that I tried to explain in a recent YouTube short, causing a ton of controversy with numerous people saying I'm wrong despite showing the evidence. Because of the way Metagross' attack is worded with the you may part, you may discard those 3 metal. But Slowking doesn't have to have 3 metal to deal the extra 150 damage. Yeah, it's confusing and I barely understand it myself. Basically, you can choose to activate the secondary effect when you launch it. If Slowking has any metal energy attached, they are discarded. But if there's no metal energy attached, you still do 300 damage, but nothing's discarded. As a result, Slowking has ditched Conkeldurr like it's the oddly veiny and girthy guy at the gym, replacing it with the hard body of Metagross. So now the King can deal 300 damage each turn, one-shotting someone like Mega Kangaskhan, where previously it topped out at 250. If I tried to explain this ruling any further, I'd go cross-eyed. For now, just enjoy the fact that Slowking is once again a threat in Standard, as this first place list shows. Though keep in mind that if everything lines up as expected, we probably won't get Mega Slowbro until August-ish. If you're still not convinced by that first place list, here's a second place one. Unless the Pokemon Company issues a statement in the next month or two correcting how Metagross has been played so far in Japan, this is happening whether we understand it or not. A sight almost as nice as 2 glistening feet, Ceruledge is back in the mainstream, even managing a top 10 ranking in that Week 2 Chaos Rising tier list. And it's all because of Prism Tower, the exact type of card Ceruledge needs right now. Discard 2 cards from hand, draw 1. It's simple yet elegant, boosting your damage by 40 every turn, provided you ditch 2 energy. There's very little changes to the list. Just add 2 Prism Tower and you're done. Brilliant Blender helps get 5 energy in the discard pile, and Blowtorch can discard a Tool, Special Energy, or Stadium at the cost of losing a Fire Energy from hand. I will note that Ceruledge got off to a slower start than Regigigas in the Chaos Rising format, so whether it continues this surge remains to be seen. If you're wondering about our Chaladon, Prism Tower hasn't quite penetrated lists as much as I thought. Probably because Ultra Ball, Carmine, and Explorer's Guidance are enough to get a couple energy in the bin. I've also seen Prism Tower in several other decks, meaning it will be the best new stadium of 2026 so far. Considering the other 2 are Lumio City and Angie Floette though, that's not exactly something to be proud of. To quickly cover some of the other cards in Chaos Rising, the Spreading Deoxys has appeared in a few underperforming Steven's Metagross lists. Since the 2 extra energy can be anything, if you can load this thing up with 3 Psychic and 2 Metal, it's able to deal 120 to the active and 120 to someone on the bench. Though it will require 2 Metagross in play plus a manual attachment. The Speed Deoxys has been used in 2 Slowking decks. For a single Psychic, including a Telepathic, it knocks out a Badoo and draws you up to 5 while also having free retreat. And the Protect Deoxys was in 1 Steven's Metagross deck. Though it's not nearly as good as Cornerstone Masked Ogerpon, with Deoxys needing to attack to be protected from ability Pokemon damage. Next up, I will admit I was wrong about AZ's Tranquility. It's been in 15 different decks varying from Metagross to Lucario to Dragapult. In a world where Roxy's performance and Yveltal exist, being able to switch and heal is useful in a pinch, especially when Meowth can find it. I'm definitely still Team Jumbo Ice Cream, but if Mallow and Lana could be a playable card in the tag team days, why can't its weaker successor follow in the same footsteps? For the final trainer, we have Ryan Felipe. It's only been in 10 decks so far, with things like Doublade, Hopzation, and Steven's Metagross finding a use for it. Being able to accelerate 2 metal from the discard pile is a good effect, meaning you can power up a Mega Mawile out of nowhere and gobble them all the way down. Or Zacian with a Choice Band and Manual Attachment plus Felipe can deal up to 330 damage at any point in the game. Looking at the special energy, Nitro Fire was included in 3 Cerulege decks for some reason, even though it doesn't discard any energy with its attack. And Magnet Metal Energy is seeing as much play as I expected, making its way into 7 top 16 decks. It looks like it's mostly just being used as a way to freely retreat Metagross, since the 3 retreat cost is too much for Air Balloon. We're still 2 months away from the launch of Chaos Rising on May 21st, but it's clear the set won't bring too much chaos to the meta. Unless your name is Special Red Card, because that damn thing's going to be a one of in at least 69% of decks. I will say though, I am slightly more excited for Chaos Rising than Perfect Order thanks to Beedrill and Greninja. And Patrat and Prism Tower at least add a little bit of extra strategy to deck building. But overall, these 86 cards aren't going to shift things like when you need to capitalize a letter. And if that's the worst joke I've ever told on this channel, please comment down below. Pilot, you're so handsome, and I want to have your children who I can only hope are as amazing at Pokemon cards as you.